Some years, on this Sunday, we focus on the story of the Palms and the parade. Other years on this Sunday, we also tell the story of Jesus' death, which is referred to as the Passion. This year we're doing the latter by presenting a dramatic reading of the story as told by Matthew's community. We will hear about the parade, but there are no palms in Matthew's version, just branches and cloaks. We will also hear the story of the events leading to the end of Jesus' life. It is a painful story. But unless we hear the story of the pain and the violence of the crucifixion, we will miss the full significance of Easter Sunday. The first Christians told and retold the crucifixion story, and it grew in the telling until it became for them a story of what happens when love, generosity and hope confront power, money and military might. And that's why the story of Jesus' crucifixion has become far more than a piece of history. We listen to this story over and over because we know it is true in our lives. We experience a deep, profound sadness when we see what happens, when the naked lust for power and control confronts the spiritual gifts of love, kindness, justice, and peace. Hear the story.
When Jesus and his disciples had come near Jerusalem at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them,
"Go into the village ahead of you, and immediately you will find a donkey tied and a colt with her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, just say this, 'The rabbi needs them,' and he will send them immediately."
This took place to fulfill what had been spoken through the prophet, saying, "Tell the daughter of Zion, look, your sovereign is coming to you, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey." The disciples went and did as Jesus had directed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and put their cloaks on them. And Jesus mounted and rode towards the city. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, and others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowds that went ahead of him and that followed were shouting,
"Hosanna to the heir of the house of David! Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Most High! Hosanna in the highest heaven!"
When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was in turmoil.
"Who is this?"
"This is the prophet Jesus from Nazareth in Galilee."
On the first day of the unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus.
"Where do you want us to make the preparation for you to eat the Passover?"
"Go into the city to a certain person and say, 'The teacher says, my time is near. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.'"
So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover meal. When it was evening, Jesus took his place with the 12, and while they were eating, he said,
"Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me."
The disciples became greatly distressed and began to say to one after another,
"Surely not I, teacher."
"The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The chosen one goes as it is written, but woe to that one by whom the chosen one is betrayed. It would have been better for that one not to have been born."
Judas, the one who betrayed him, whispered to Jesus,
"Surely not I, Rabbi."
"You have said so."
While they were eating, Jesus took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it, gave it to the disciples.
"Take this and eat it. This is my body."
Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to his friends.
"Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will never again drink of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Abba's kingdom."
When they had sung the Hallel, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them,
"You will all become deserters because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go ahead of you to Galilee."
"Though all become deserters because of you, I will never desert you."
"Truly I tell you, Peter, this very night before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times.
"Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you."
And neither will I.
Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane.
"Sit here while I go over there and pray."
Then Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, and began to be grieved and agitated.
"I am deeply grieved even to death. Remain here and stay awake with me."
And going a little farther, Jesus threw himself on the ground and prayed,
"Abba, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not what I want, but what you want."
Jesus came to the disciples and found them sleeping.
"Peter, could you not stay awake with me 1 hour? Stay awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak."
Jesus went away for the second time and prayed,
"Abba, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done."
Again, Jesus came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the third time, saying the same words. Then he came back to the disciples.
"Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? See, the hour is at hand, and the chosen one is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand."
While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd with swords and clubs, from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now Judas the betrayer had given them a sign.
The one I will kiss is the one. Arrest him.
Judas came up to Jesus and kissed him.
Shalom, Rabbi.
"Friend, do what you are here to do."
Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and arrested him. Suddenly, one of those with Jesus put his hand on his sword, drew it, and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear.
"Put your sword back in its place, for all who live by the sword will die by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Abba God, who will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as though I were a bandit? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. But all this has taken place so that the scriptures of the prophets may be fulfilled."
Then all the disciples deserted Jesus and fled. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, in whose house the scribes and the elders had gathered. But Peter was following him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest. And going inside, he sat with the guards in order to see how this would end. Now the chief priests and the whole council were looking for false testimony against Jesus, so that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At least 2 came forward.
"This Jesus fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days.
At that, the high priest stood up.
Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?
But Jesus was silent.
I put you under oath before the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the firstborn of God.
You have said so, but I tell you, from now on you will see the Chosen One seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven.
Then the high priest tore his clothes.
He has blasphemed. Why do we still need witnesses? You have now heard this blasphemy. What is your verdict?
He deserves death.
Then they spat in his face and struck him, and some slapped Jesus.
Prophesy to us, you Messiah. Who is it that struck you?
Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. A servant girl came up to him.
You were also with Jesus the Galilean.
I don't know what you're talking about.
When Peter went out to the porch, another servant girl saw him.
This man was with Jesus of Nazareth.
I do not know the man.
Certainly, you are also one of them, for your accent betrays you.
I do not know the man.
And at that moment, the cock crowed. Then Peter remembered what Jesus had said.
Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times.
And Peter went out and wept bitterly. When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people conferred together against Jesus in order to bring about his death. They bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor. When Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he repented and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders.
I have sinned by betraying innocent blood.
What is that to us? See to it yourself.
Throwing down the pieces of silver in the temple, he departed, and he went and hanged himself. Now Jesus stood before Pilate, the Roman governor.
Are you the ruler of the Judeans?
You say so.
But when Jesus was accused by the chief priests and elders, he did not answer.
Do you not hear how many accusations they make against you?
But Jesus gave Pilate no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Now at the festival, the governor was accustomed to release a prisoner for the crowd, anyone whom they wanted. At that time they had a notorious prisoner called Jesus Barabbas. So after they had gathered, Pilate said to them,
Whom do you want me to release for you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah?
Pilate realized that it was out of jealousy that they had handed Jesus over. While Pilate was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him.
Have nothing to do with that innocent man, for today I have suffered a great deal because of a dream about him.
Now the chief priests and elders persuaded the crowds to ask Pilate for Barabbas and to have Jesus killed.
Which of the two do you want me to release for you?
Barabbas.
Then what should I do with Jesus who is called the Messiah?
Let him be crucified.
Why? What evil has he done?
Let him be crucified.
So when Pilate saw that he could do nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took some water and washed his hands before the crowd.
I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves.
His blood be on us and on our children.
So Pilate released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, handed him over to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole cohort around them. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on his head. They put a reed in his right hand and knelt before him and mocked him.
"Hail, ruler of the Judeans!"
They spat on Jesus and took the reed and struck him on the head. After mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. As they went out, they came upon a person from Cyrene named Simon, whom they compelled to carry his cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull, they offered Jesus wine to drink, mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes among themselves by casting lots. Then they sat down there and kept watch over him. Over his head they put the charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, the ruler of the Judeans." Then 2 bandits were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads.
"You said you would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days. So save yourself. If you are the God's own, come down from the cross."
In the same way, the chief priests also, along with the scribes and the elders, were mocking him.
He saved others, but he cannot save himself. He is the ruler of Israel. Let him come down from the cross now, and then we will believe him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him.
The bandits who were crucified with him also taunted him in the same way. From noon on, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. And at about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice,
my God, why have you forsaken me?"
"This man is calling for Elijah."
At once, one of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink.
"Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come and save him."
Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. Now when the centurion and those with him saw the earthquake and what took place, they were terrified.
Truly this man was God's own.
Many women were also there, looking on him from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee and had provided for him. Among them were Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James and Joseph and the mother of Zebedee's children. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it be given to him. So Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn into the rock. He then rolled a great stone to the door of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there, sitting opposite the tomb.
And so the story leaves us with the aching pain of loss and defeat. Peter weeps bitterly because he has turned his back on his best, most loving friend. Mary Magdalene is heartbroken. She looks on from a distance in despair. And we too so often betray love and justice, and we don't do the things that make for peace. And we too despair when this chaotic world in which we live seems to be tearing itself apart, looking on, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to respond. Our story today is about death, about hopelessness. Everything is finished, dead. Jesus, the human one, he who strove to show a new way, the way of non-violence, he who seemed to show us the face of a loving Abba God, he is just another corpse lying cold in a tomb. There's nothing left. Nothing except nothing but a wavering thread of hope. And we tell this story knowing in faith that it has another chapter. And we all hold on to this hope as we move through Holy Week. Amen.